episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. I'm going to save the rest of the intro because today's guest, I want to get into it. We're here with him in a little bit because there's going to be a ton of value coming from this, you guys. We're going to be talking about insurance, and I talk about that a lot on this show because I personally feel like it is the most important thing for your business. And I also think it's the most misunderstood component of your business that gets a lot of people in trouble. So we're going to get into that here shortly. But today is Friday. You guys know what that means. We're going to jump into This Week in Freight, powered by my friends over at DAT. You guys, we're going to be doing a breakdown of a lane analysis out here. And today is flatbeds. This is my niche. This is my wheelhouse. This is all 99% of the freight that I do is flatbed freight. All right. And I personally love this niche more than anything. And today's lane is the epitome of stability in my eyes out there. And we're going to break that down here, you guys. But if you want your lane featured on this show, if you're having trouble reading the market that you're in, you're having trouble quoting that freight, email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com, and they will feature it live on the show. I don't need any other information besides shipping city, delivery city, mode. That's it. And like I always say, if you want a mask because you think I'm going to be doing some in-depth research, you guys just send it to the nearest biggest city. Trust me, I don't have the time to find all of that stuff out there. But today's lane we are going to be breaking down is going to be on a flatbed, and it is Dallas, Texas to Memphis, Tennessee. And I was running through this one here in particular because I'm going through an RFP myself out there out of the state of Texas. And it did show some interesting spikes out there for another lane that I was going down on, but we're going to talk about this one here. So if you see, there's a $10 variance on this lane within the last year. All right. So think about all the weather events that have happened in the last year, all of the spikes in the market and everything. This is the epitome of a power lane. Okay. I look at a lane like this is kind of like when we were breaking down Atlanta to Dallas for dry vans on Monday, you guys. This is going to be one of those ones as a broker, it is very challenging to compete on. Okay. Not saying that it's not available to you, but these are those lanes that you see. And when I see this, the stability of this across that year, to me, that is one of those things like that. It's a tough one to crack into. Again, I'm not saying it's not able to. I'm sure one of the brokers who listen to this show is going to brag about how they're phenomenal on this lane in flatbeds, and that just kind of comes along with the territory. But I look at this is at the height of the market, you guys, which is June of last year. If I'm looking at it from a 12-month basis, it was only like $60 more than that, right? So it just kind of fluctuates out there. But if you're doing this job the way that you should as a broker, plain and simple, you have the right carriers that are on here who are not changing their rates at all throughout the year. I know that there's a lot of talk in the on social media right now about this. I've been through multiple market shifts in my career, you guys. Nothing that you're seeing right now is new, and most importantly, it's nothing that you're not going to be able to work through with your customers' freight, because there's a lot of opportunity in market shifts that happen like this because average really excels in loose markets that we've been operating in for the last probably 4 years as a whole. So when you see this stuff though coming up, from my perspective, this is when you can have your time to shine, because you look at a lane like this, Dallas to Memphis, for example, this lane probably won't shift much throughout this year. I don't feel that. And there's a lot that has to come down the pipe here before I will say anything other than that in regards to the freight market. But this lane is the epitome of stability. And if you're out there and you're trying to read some of this stuff, I always talk about the secondary cities that are in the market, you guys. And what I mean by that is you go 100 miles outside of Dallas and 100 miles outside of Memphis, those lanes are going to be affected first. So if you're out there and you're prospecting business specifically inside of flatbed coming up here, or you're currently doing it, I would avoid power lanes at all costs, because I feel like that will be the absolute last lane that there will be any disruption on. And that is for all modes that are out there, drive-in, refrigerated, and flatbed. So as you're going in and you're prospecting new business here, you guys, I would start outside of the major metros and work your way up, because that is naturally where the service failures start in any mode. In the event there is any shift, is the harder it is to get to that shipping city, the higher the likelihood of a tender rejection that is going to come along with that, or a load failure. So if you're out there trying to build a book of business, if you're out there really trying to plant your flag with a shipper, I would start at their most unappealing city that they have. But that market, you guys, what I'm seeing here, Dallas to Memphis for a flatbed, is about as stable as you're going to get. It has been for the last year, and I would predict it's going to stay that way for possibly the remainder of 2026. But stay tuned, you guys. A lot of things can shake out here during that time frame. But that being said, you guys, I'm ready to break down insurance. I'm ready to talk about a bunch of stuff. And I have my friend Chris Loewenberg on the show with Cottingham and Butler. So, Chris, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well, man, and I'm excited to talk about insurance. I know everybody on the insurance side that I have on the show, when I tell them this, they're always like, "Wait, you are?"
Right.
Like, really? But it's one of those things that, you know, man, this is the greatest protection for your business that you can have out there. And when you do it wrong, unfortunately, it's a death sentence to most organizations, and you're on the hook for hundreds of thousands on the light end, if not millions of dollars in litigation and lawsuits that are going to be handed down to you. So before we kind of start breaking some of this down, Chris, what brought you into insurance? How did you get your start in that?
Well, I think if you've had other insurance guests on the program, they would say we fell backwards into insurance. We don't find a lot of people that grow up and say they want to be in insurance. But we found a bunch of opportunities here at CMB and Cottingham and Butler with what we want to do, how we can help the industry. And I came in from publishing, so a totally different industry, got really into what was happening in the industry, the opportunities there, and just seeing the partnerships we have with not only the motor carrier, the underwriters, and then also, like you, the brokers.
So let's dive into this, right? Because I think, you know, insurance is all over. It's all over the news right now, right? Like it's unfortunately every single day it seems like there's another major accident that's happening, or there's a theft ring that's getting cracked out there. So it's like this isn't going away. And I look at a lot of this is, you know, when you're out there as a motor carrier or even a broker, and I think brokers need to pay more attention to this than they might be aware of. What is the biggest misconception that you think motor carriers have when it comes into like choosing an actual insurance policy?
Yeah, I think the interesting part about where we sit as an agent is we sit in the intersection of the motor carrier, the underwriters, and the brokers, right? We can see all the pieces in this. And a lot of times the motor carriers look at the insurance piece as kind of like a tax, right? They look at it as something that's not controllable, that's done to them, right?
Mm.
And what we try to do is help them understand that there's a lot of elements that they can control in this, right? Part of it is finding somebody that speaks the language of trucking, because that's our job, is to basically relay what they're doing to the underwriters, because the underwriters are just trying to They got the actuaries. They're just trying to rate based on historical information, right? Where we're trying to help the motor carriers forecast and understand how they can take advantage of what's happening with their inspections, what's happening with their equipment, how the drivers are, how that impacts what this whole insurance rating model looks like. Right. And there's so much noise in the industry right now, Chris. It's like you've got all of this technology and telematics and everything, and it can be overwhelming. And it's important to have a partner that understands this language. And you and I talked about it. Technically, anyone can go and get a property casualty license and start writing trucking, right? But that license doesn't automatically make you a trucking expert.
Yeah, dude, I could go on for the next 3 hours about that, like specifically in regards to like freight brokers. Anybody can go out there and become a broker, but
Right.
like there's a big difference between somebody who offers brokerage and somebody who's a transportation professional. I mean, my good friend Chris Brewer, he just put a phenomenal post out there this morning about that in regards to the market, and that just couldn't be truer, to me, because it's like there's so much noise that is out there that I think a lot of it is kind of manufactured. But I look at it is it's like you have to choose your vendors strategically in business, right? And if you're going in there, and I understand price is a factor. I'm a bootstrap founder. I get it. But I also understand that like I need a subject matter expert specifically when it comes to insurance. I don't want to go to an insurance company that dabbles in freight. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, we do 75 different. I want a trucking expert, just like, and again, I sell myself on this as a broker when I was talking about doing the lane analysis. 99% of the freight we move is flatbed. I am an open deck freight expert. At the end of the day, I will go out there and I can separate myself. And I feel like you guys probably are in that exact same boat. You guys can separate yourself from the rest by asking the right questions and stuff. So it's like, if we're looking, like, what are some of those mistakes that people are that you think that they're making, Chris, when it comes down to like using their data? You were alluding to data a couple of times there. How are they misusing their data when it comes to choosing the right insurance?
It might not be the fact that they're misusing it. It could be the fact that they're not taking action on it, right? So there's all these dashboards, right? There's probably an ELD dashboard. There's a, there could, if they're using dash cams, they're going to have a dash cam dashboard, right? All of this noise, all this data coming at them. And I can tell you, if the behavior shows up, if you see the things on these dashboards or on these warning signals and you don't do anything about it, that's just documentation. It's not risk management, right? So understanding, again, tons of noise, boil it down to the pieces that matter. And that's where having partners that understand this really work to your advantage. Find the pieces that really have an impact that matter. And then you don't have to change it overnight, but let's make steps to get it on the right path, right? And that's what the underwriters want to see. They look at the historical things, but they also want to see what's changing, what are they doing differently, and how can I forecast that they're going to be better going forward.
How is misalignment in this industry potentially driving higher costs, do you think? Like, misalignment between brokers, carriers, shippers, kind of like the whole thing.
Yeah. And I spoke to it a little bit. Underwriters, that's a guessing game, right? They're trying to price this stuff. And if you have people that don't speak the language of trucking, that don't know what, let's just say, tarping exclusions are, right? You mentioned flatbed, right? If you don't have that and have that story, what's an underwriter going to do, right? They're going to price it defensively. They're going to give you higher premiums because they don't know all the elements of it, right? In the broker world, because we deal with brokers all the time, we send, I would say last year we were around 900,000 certs we sent out because of all the brokerages we work with and all of our clients, right?
Yeah.
Brokers are doing the same thing. They're trying to vet carriers and make sure they're trusting these loads, right, with the right people. And that's protecting their shipper, right? Their shipper relationship. The whole business we're in right now, the industry and everything, it's still built on relationship and trust. But now we have all this noise, all this technology that shouldn't replace the trust, but just give us some other elements that we can look at to try to expand on that.
So Speaking of technology, what are some of the common fallacies out there in regards to technology and insurance? Like I know the term real-time monitoring kind of went away here recently, but it's like I look at a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff. It's like, how are you guys utilizing tech to, you know, help kind of bridge the gap out there between that and like data? Is it going out there and like processing data that you can give to your clients, and stuff like that?
We use a lot of tools where we look at the inspection data, we look at, the CSA safer, right? All of that. And we'll do some forecasting to help insureds and motor carriers understand that, hey, if you're doing the same thing that you've done in the past year, here's what we're going to look like, right? Here's what the safety scores, here's what you might expect for inspections. So that's one element, right? And that's an underwriting piece that they look at. Then you have the technology with the telematics that's coming in now, and all of, like you said, this real time data piece, right? I can tell you the insurance companies right now, a majority of them have no idea what to do with all the data. It's
Yeah.
so much. They're just trying to get their hands on all this as like a data lake to try to figure out how to use that. And motor carriers think it's going to be like Big Brother. They're just going to be, you and I are going to be sitting at a screen monitoring every turn they make, right?
Mhm.
And that's just not the case right now. I think the misconception is that the motor carriers think that this is getting done to them, when these tools can be extremely helpful if they use the data that's coming to them to change behavior. Then you
Yeah.
have the brokers like yourself, where it's a time crunch. You're trying to book these loads, you're trying to get vet carriers. And, we talk a lot about COIs, right? Certificates of insurance. It's a piece of paper, right? It's a snapshot in time. It can be outdated as soon as I send it to you. So we're
Yeah.
trying to work with a lot of these partners, search carriers, Carrier HQ, Highway, all of these, to try to get more real time data to you, to say, hey, if I'm going to book a load, I want to make sure it's with the right carrier, the right equipment's on the policy, they have the right limits, right? There's no exclusions that I need to be aware of.
So let's talk about that, because I think personally that is a massive misconception in the brokerage community, that just because they are given a valid policy, that they think that that's the way it can be throughout the year. So essentially, somebody could go in there and say they have reefer freight, for example, but
Mhm.
then they can book a load, but then they can go in and change their policy in that time frame. So like they could book a load today on a Friday, but like yesterday, for example, they went in and removed reefer breakdown insurance from it. Can that happen throughout the year?
Yeah, we don't see that as much, right? I would tell you
Might
the
have
the
been a
bigger
growth.
concern is, you know, the piece of paper that you get, the COI, doesn't give you all the details. It
Mhm.
doesn't give you the details about reefer breakdown, or if it's even on the policy. And I can tell you, reefer coverage is not the same across all insurance markets either, right?
Mhm.
There's a ton of different nuances there. But yes, I can send you a COI today, a cert, and then tomorrow or even within 5 minutes, they can go and remove a truck that you thought was going to be the one that was going to take it, right? They might cancel their cargo policy and go with somebody else because of a price difference, right? It's a snapshot in time, right? But right now, that's, or historically, that's all you've had to go off of. That's the trust element.
So that to me, so how would you advise brokers? And I don't even know if you can like even provide guidance with something like that. How would you advise brokers to go through and check that? Is that like in every load that you book with a carrier? Like, or is there like a 30-day or a 90-day thing? Because I hear stuff like that, and it makes me think for a second, Chris, how many systems are out there right now that show, hey, these guys have a valid policy from January through December of 2026, the calendar year. But they could have already gone in and changed out some of their coverages. But most brokers, they're set up and active in their system. They don't even go in there and see. So like they could technically be booking a carrier right now that does not have valid or at least updated insurance.
Yeah, right now there's not a great solution, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that I can snap my fingers and say this is the way to go. There's a lot of trust in this industry, like I said.
Mhm.
I think there's companies coming that we're partnering and we're all striving to get to more of a real time validation on this stuff, right? Where with technology and what the partnerships we can do, we can give you more confidence that, hey, this might not be a dated certificate of insurance that's 30 days old, right?
Mhm.
I can tell you our shop and some other shops, we've got a whole team where it's like you call us, we're going to be able to get you that cert pretty much real time or a really quick
Yeah.
turnaround to give you that confidence when you're booking that load.
Is there any is there any obligation on the insurance company's stance that if any of your policies are changed, say they cancel cargo insurance, that you guys notify anybody who requested to be listed as a certificate holder? Does
Oh
that
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that was
There's
sorry.
definitely, yeah. If you cancel things, we have cert holder lists that we send notice of cancellation, right? Because we sit in that intersection where
Mhm.
we just like you, we want this industry to stay strong. We want to have transparency, right? So we'll send it, yeah, cert holder, they cancel, we're sending that.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. It's like I also think about all those times. How many times are people sent that email and it just gets junked right away? Like they don't go in and look at it. And again, like this is why like compliance, insurance, all of this stuff. It's so important to your organization because again, I look at it as like lawyers and insurance companies, like they're looking for you to have a bad day and potentially overlook something.
And
And then
then
you
make
go
their
ahead.
payday.
Yeah, and that's it, right? And you see it all the time with, trucking companies are rolling billboards for nuclear verdicts right now. Like they, unfortunately, it from my position only, trucking companies and drivers are guilty until proven innocent. They are not innocent until proven guilty right now. And I look at a lot of this stuff like this is why but I also think like the way that the current administration is kind of cracking down on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I think that the trucking companies who are operating in the right manner, they are about to get a payday that I don't think they could, like most people could anticipate from the sense of like it will be a true golden age because it's going to be so easy to verify these guys are who they say they are. They're up to date, clean driving records, all of that stuff. They're going to be able to charge a premium. I think like that is where things are going. I think we're still a little bit of a ways off from that. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better here. But I think for the ones who make it through to the other side that are running clean operations, I think they are about to be as valuable as they ever have been from a partnership perspective.
Yeah, we'd love to see it. And that's why we're partnering with a lot of these companies. GenLogs is another one, right? Where
Yeah.
it's trying to verify that the person that said they're going to do the job is doing the job, right? And that's what everybody wants. And, we need some help on the FMCSA. Let's not give out DOTs to everybody under the sun. Let's get the proper carriers, the proper trucking companies that are doing it right, and let's invest in them and have them carry the industry.
So, how much of that do you think kind of plays into why insurance rates are what they are? Like, if we're looking at kind of like overarching here, we don't need to go into details on any of these highly publicized accidents and stuff that are out there, but like, how much of that contributes to a consistent rising insurance costs? Because like again, I see in my mind, I see a direct line item between all of these nuclear verdicts that are coming down and the absolute rise in insurance premiums.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think unfortunately you have the really good trucking companies that are supplementing the bad ones, right? And if you have all of these new companies coming in, there's not a lot of history. If there's history, it's chameleon carriers, right? And underwriters are trying to figure that out, but they're going to price it at a certain point. It's probably going to be expensive, but when you talk about nuclear verdicts, it doesn't cover it,
Mhm.
right? So
No, and
you have to have the other companies supplement it.
Yeah, and I look at it is that a lot of this stuff is a rising cost. Like I see a direct correlation between this and like the rising cost of goods that are out there, right? Because it's
Right.
like it affects the manufacturers as well. A lot of the shippers out there, they all have insurance, and if their costs go up for insurance, they got to raise their rates to their customers, who then pass it on down to the end users, right? So I think like this is a lot bigger deal than I think a lot of people want to give credit to a rising cost of goods that are out there in the country right now. Because I mean, you've been doing insurance for a long time. When have you ever seen insurance rates drop?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it's like I see a lot of that, and I think it's all kind of connected. But like, what are some of those things, Chris, that you've seen carriers or brokers even implement into their organization, whether it's a piece of technology or an SOP that has actually contributed to like I don't want to say a price reduction, but like they've been able to control their insurance. It's a lot more. It's not a variable cost anymore, right? Like they actually have a better grasp on where their insurance is for their company.
Yeah, I think it goes back to understanding all the elements and all the data points and getting your story right. In a lot of cases, it feels like nobody wants to deal with insurance, right? And when they get to that point where they're coming up on their renewal, right? They're like, all right, I got to figure out this insurance thing. It seems like it's uncontrollable at that point, right? We like to get involved early, be a partner during this, get that story together. So underwriters are like, yeah, we understand what's going on here and we'll price accordingly, rather than just, hey, we're going to throw out a price and guess, right?
Yeah.
And then when we get our safety teams involved in this, we can say, hey, what are the elements we can control and what is the feedback we can look at. And then when you get into the bigger fleets, it's then how you buy insurance, right? We have a lot of trucking captives, and that's really trying to insulate them and not supplement so much the other carriers.
Mhm. Yeah, I see this as, and even we touched on COIs and everything, but I see this as I feel like one of the unspoken about greatest risks that a lot of brokers and carriers are up against is the exclusions that are on their policy that they are not even aware of, and
Oh
the
yeah.
fact that they're hauling freight. Like I could only imagine how many conversations you've had with your clients, Chris, where you're like, you're hauling what? You
Right.
realize with your current policy that that's not.
Well, we get calls all the time from brokers, or from the motor carriers where they're like, hey, I have this policy. I'm working with somebody else. I can't take this load because of XYZ. Can you help me out? Right. And it's because they don't understand. And, part of it is you probably should understand what you're buying. Right. But you also want to work with somebody that's their expertise, right? That's their niche. Right. So we started off talking about tarping exclusions. If you're rolling down and you don't know what you have for a policy and you get into a claim, you're just kind of hoping and praying that you have that kind of coverage in your policy.
Mhm. No, and that's the thing, right? Because to me, I think a lot of people see cargo, Chris, and they think everything.
Yeah.
Like I was brought like unfortunately, I've been doing. I think people think I'm embellishing when I say this, but like I've have some friends who own companies that um they booked a carrier who didn't have the right policy for, I use reefer freight as an example a lot. They didn't have errors and omissions on there, and the driver accidentally set it to
Yeah.
not a non-continuous temperature, and that spoiled the load. And the carrier's insurance denied it because they're like the driver they don't have errors and omissions, and like they ended up paying like a 6-figure claim out of pocket just to keep the relationship with the customer at that time. And that's why it's like, for me, it's these little things. And like the old saying, death by 1,000 cuts, I think is the most truest thing in business, because it very rarely is there one catastrophic event that happens that puts you under. It is a systematic failure that trickles up that leads to that.
Oh
Right. So
yeah. Yep.
how many, yeah. So go ahead.
I was going to say that one claim there can have such a ripple effect, right?
Mhm.
That motor carrier then has a bad relationship maybe with the broker, right? The broker's trying to protect their relationship with the shipper, right? I'm sure the motor carrier is going back to their insurance agent talking about, what kind of coverage they had, right? So it's just those little nuances, as small as they seem, to your point, can have massive impacts.
Yeah. And that's where, unfortunately, a lot of people get themselves in trouble, Chris, is
Yep.
they overlook that stuff. And, again, like that's why you have to be so careful about who you choose to be your partner. And that's why, like, specifically when it comes down to the transportation industry. And, I have equipment finance guys that come on the show as well. Like, this is why you got to work with people in the vertical that you're operating in.
Right.
Try and remove the generalists who are kind of like, oh, we do everything. No. I want to work with trucking insurance who only does trucking insurance, essentially, right? Because they're going to be able to go in there and help me decipher all of this information so I'm protected, because nobody wants to pay their insurance premium at the end of the day until they realize that claim that just happened is now fully protected and they do not have to pay, $100,000 out of pocket that would have potentially shut them down and bankrupted them if that would have happened.
Exactly.
Chris, I appreciate your time, man. This flew by. See, I told you this was going to fly by. I'm going to get
on,
dude. I'm going to have to get you back on because I feel like we could continue just to drive this message home about these best practices. But how does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on?
Yeah, I would say just look us up on our website, Cottingham and Butler. We're happy to help. Like you said, we specialize in this industry. All we do is trucks. We're happy to help.
Perfect. If you guys can't find Chris or Cottingham and Butler out there, please hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in contact with them. But that is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moves.